Hey man,
Hello.
how are you doing, Abdullah Siddiqui?
That's a thesis question. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been the same for like 8 months now.
It's crazy, right? It's
Yeah.
been so long.
It has. This year has just sort of flashed by.
It's a
Yeah.
complete write-off of the year, basically. Just
Yeah.
wipe it from the record. First of all, congratulations on Magenta Cyan.
Thank you.
Amazing song
Thank
with
you.
Misha Shafi. How's the response been to it so far?
It's been pretty good. It's sort of proven my. Well, I mean, it's not really a theory. It's a known thing, but like, it's a cynical thing that I don't like believing, but now I have to believe it, which is the fact that once you have a video out, it's just gonna
Do better.
It's just gonna do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it did.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, that's a
For
good
me,
thing.
that's a really good thing because I like music videos. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, people need both of these things to.
I
work.
love music videos. I love filmmaking,
Mm.
but it's like there's always questions of like who's gonna fund it, how are you
Yeah.
gonna like get the equipment and stuff. I mean, this one we did on a budget of $0.
And you shot it with iPhones and
shot on iPhones.
Apple. Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah, I mean they don't need it.
Yeah.
But it was mostly done in my room.
That's
Like,
crazy, dude.
Yeah, so it's just. But like now I've exhausted that concept now. So
How do you mean? Like you're just like, I'm done with this limitation.
No, I mean like I could have done like the DIY homemade, but like black and white to hide that it's homemade thing once.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And now I can't do it again.
yeah.
So yeah,
It's a good way though. Black and white really does hide all the
all the
bad colors
discrepancies
or
in
whatever.
lighting
Mhm.
and all that stuff. Yeah, so
Yeah. So, but the video was really, really nice, and that especially that landscape shot of Misha as she's dancing is a beautiful shot.
Yeah, and it was also like tricky to coordinate because she's in Toronto, I'm over here. So like, but it was sort of her idea to do everything on iPhones because she wanted to kind of make a point about the fact that like you don't need like
Yeah, you
bright
can't do it. You
cameras
can't do
to-
this on an Android phone. It can only be on an iPhone. I don't know why
Yeah.
we keep specifying iPhone for now.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Shot on phones.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
shot on phones.
Shot
Doesn't
on
matter which phones.
cellular mobile telephones.
Cellular devices. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the important part, that they have an internet connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a great song, and it's actually
Thank
the
you.
snippet that I heard of it was very electronic. The snippet that you posted, and then I went to hear the main song, and I was like, "My damn, that's got like double A and like it's
Yeah.
got so many Eastern classical
Yeah.
influences."
Yeah. Well, that's because like I was in the U.S. I've been in the U.S. since like August last year, and then I came back in March.
But sorry, just to interrupt you there. What's
Yeah.
you've been in the US for a while, or is this the only? Like how?
I'd never been there before.
No way.
Yeah.
You've born and raised Pakistan,
Yeah.
in Lahore.
I hadn't been on a plane before, like July of last year.
Really?
Yeah, no. But I went there in August for school, and then I did like most of my first year, and then March I came back. And so what was I talking about?
You talk. What we did?
Why
Yeah.
there's so many Eastern influences on that track.
Yeah.
It's because I was over there, and it's just like I feel like this is, I don't know if it's the same for you, but like once you're in a different culture, you kind of hold on to your own roots a bit more strongly, and just like in that moment of like homesickness, I was like, I want to sort of explore more of my own, because I didn't grow up with like any Pakistani influences at all. Like I grew up listening entirely to Western music. But I was like, why not explore that a little bit? I messed around with some samples, tablas. There's another track that I recently did with Zoe Vikaji, which has like a Qawwali sample in it. So like I was messing around with those influences, and I made this track pretty much entirely before I came to it with Misha.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it sort of sounds exactly halfway down both of our styles somehow.
Okay.
And I don't know how that happened, but it was like kind of like
Happy accident in a way.
yeah.
Mhm. It's weird because when we talk about electronic music, one of my biggest sort of like, whenever I listen to electronic music, especially that comes out of Pakistan, I'm like, I wish they used these instruments that we have, like
Yeah.
these samples that we have, because it makes it all of a sudden I really love it. As soon as I hear any kind of dhol sample or a
Yeah.
tabla sample or a
Yeah.
sitar sample, I'm just like, I'm in. Like
Yeah.
I always love that kind of
Yeah.
mixture of that fusion sound.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
even fusion has sort of become like a bad word in the
Mm.
industry now, but like I would like to think that what I did on this track particularly, it's not exactly fusion because I don't think I'm fusing it with anything that really exists. Like the brand of electronic music that's in this track in particular, it's not EDM, it's not trap, it's not anything that's like, at least, you know, in the zeitgeist yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's more alternative electronic, it's more like futuristic.
Soulful, maybe.
And yeah. And so like I'm merging that with local sounds, and I feel like that's not really fusion. I feel like this is kind of where local music is headed, I feel.
I remember the first time that I ever saw you play live. I'm not sure how well you remember it, but it was a couple of years ago. You know that LMM where they had basically had no outdoor venues? It was all inside on the sound stages. And I think that was your first time performing at LMM,
That was
right?
my second time.
That was your second time?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember seeing you there, and there weren't that many people in the crowd. It was sort of a midday kind of or like early afternoon show that you were playing, and I think there was technical difficulties. It was one of those kind of janky shows that I was like, okay, but you can easily see like, okay, these people are trying their absolute hardest, and everyone's a bit nervous, but it's still like.
I've kind of blocked that entire experience out of like out of my memory, honestly. The first one is even worse. The first one, like I fell, like just walking up the stage. I fell flat on my face, and it's like, and as I was walking up, like people were cheering for me, and then I fell, and everybody's just like, there's a gasp in the audience, and then I'm so mortified because that was my first real gig, like ever. Right. Like it had just been like, you know, me and my guitar in my bedroom before then, and I went up and I just was so mortified I couldn't speak. Right. So I just started playing. I didn't even introduce myself. But it went okay. It went well. And then the second year was weird. I did like a Joni Mitchell cover, and I did like a bunch of I don't even remember what I played.
I can't remember what you played, but I remember the kind of tone of the show, and I was like, okay, this is an interesting kind of makeshift sort of do the best with what you have kind of deal. And
that's been my entire life, honestly. Just do the best with what you have.
And then I think 2 years later, I saw you, or I don't know how much time it was. I saw you opening for Dalal at True Brew. Yeah, that was a very cool and very different show. It was super electronic and kind of everyone kind of felt like they knew your songs at that point, and it was like, wow, this is a cool. It's
always live performance has always been like a weird struggle for me because the kind of music I make, it's like so heavily electronic, and not just like electronic in like in the traditional sense. Like a lot of my tracks, particularly the ones that I play live, are like super weird and super textured, and there's like tools that I've used that are like really, you know, just creating super mystical kind of, you know, sounds, and that's really hard to replicate live. So I usually end up just playing a track, right? But then that's just karaoke, and it doesn't sit well with me. But then the alternative is playing guitar, which doesn't really represent my sound at all. So that's why I haven't played a live show in like since last year.
How would you solve that problem? What's your ideal live show if you had like infinite resources?
Instrumentalists, but like again, that's the thing. Like the song that I did on Nescafe, like that's a testament to the fact that it's possible. But that you saw how elaborate that is if you've seen it. Like that's, you know, a lot of instrumentalists playing a lot of instruments that had to be shipped in, you know, and it's nobody, not a lot of people have those, you know, the expertise to do that. Like even sound people who are like programming your live sound setup, like they're not going to be able to like hook all that stuff up. So it is tricky. I mean, I've seen artists like, you know, FK Twigs like do it in a simpler way where you just have like one person on a drum pad, and then you have one person playing a synth, and then the rest you like put into a track, and that's still like, it's still engaging because there's something happening on stage. Sure. But I find that most people who make my sort of music get away with it because they themselves have such a like stage presence, and they have such an image, you know, that just them alone, it's engaging enough, you know. But I'm not a pop star, so yeah.
Do you have any wishes to become a pop star? Is that ever on your mind?
Somewhere in the recesses of my guilty pleasure mind, probably. But like, I don't feel like there's a way to do that with our audience, you know, because our audience is like, I was discussing this with Misha, like because I got like 3 comments underneath the track that we did that was like, oh, like she's the Lady Gaga of Pakistan. And I was like, where do they get that?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
she's not wearing meat dresses, and
Right.
she's not arriving, to the LSAs in an egg. That's not... So, like, where are they getting this? And we sort of came to the conclusion that it's just that the fact that she has any star image
Right.
beyond the traditional, like, what is assigned to someone of her demographic in the industry. The fact that she does anything, the fact that she, like, would do a track on Pepsi and just, like, be attached to wires and,
Sure.
flap in the air. Like, that, like, to people means that she's Lady Gaga. Which, like, I mean, so that's sort of gives you an idea of what the threshold for this audience is.
Right.
You know? Like, how much you can do with your image before you're labeled Lady Gaga, So I feel like my image as it is right now, which is non-existent, is kind of a pop star by definition. So, yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you also make music that is kind of weird, but it's still very pop centric.
Yeah.
I remember especially some of your earlier stuff, it was very, very poppy in a good way, like in the way that I kind of resonate with.
Yeah.
Not poppy in the sense of like being generic and pop, but like in...
That's always been the aim and also the struggle, just to sort of balance my influences, because I've always listened to a lot of pop music. I love pop music, but in recent years I've kind of stopped listening to pop music because pop music sort of transitioned into like trap and like alt R&B, and that's I don't mind it, but like it's not really something that resonates with me. So I started listening to like more experimental people, and that I just found to be more engaging, and I feel like that's sort of the natural process of things. Like once you have enough of a grasp on music, like the only things that excite you are the things that subvert the tropes of music, so I just really have to find a balance of like experimental to popular, like and I hope I've done that well.
I was reading some articles before we had this interview, and a few of them have the word prodigy in them. A few of them had that word used.
A few of them might have said that I'm 17.
Yeah,
or even 16.
There was the one that I was reading was 18.
Yeah,
and I looked at that was like 2 years ago.
We're 20 guys.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. we got to the bottom of that. So yeah, what I mean, like even people who I've been talking to in the music industry, like the bands around Lahore, they're all like, yeah, man, this kid's doing it on his laptop in his bedroom. It's nuts. What's that like for you? Like making it, like you said, in your bedroom with a guitar and with your laptop.
Yeah. It's, like when I went to LMM for the first time, which was in 2016, I think, it was just mind-blowing for me because it was like, oh, there's other musicians. Like, because I'd grown up my entire life just like completely just secluded, doing all of this in isolation and like, sending it out into a void and hoping somebody hears it. So yeah, it can be sort of... It can be lonely. It can be tricky to like do all that stuff on your own, and it kind of puts you in like a routine that you're sort of reluctant to break out of, because then like mixed bag. Sometimes that means you're a control freak.
Yeah,
Like,
are you?
A bit, yeah. And also like that means you're a perfectionist because I am a perfectionist, and that's why I kind of don't trust other people to like handle stuff, because it's like I need to micromanage, I need to be there at every step, I need to make sure that things are done right. And when somebody slips up in the slightest, that just like confirms all of my preconceptions, So yeah, it has its downsides, but on the upside, like once something is a success, you get all the credit. So so that's cool.
It's weird that that dynamic of when you have to do everything yourself to begin with, then like letting go of even a slightest bit of control just kind of sets all your wires off, and you're just like, I can't do this. Like I hate working with other people. I feel like that's even the case in video creation. Yeah, definitely. Because you do everything yourself, you learn everything yourself, edit, shoot, pre-production, everything. Yeah. You're a one-man team, and then all of a sudden when you have to collaborate, you're like, ooh, I don't like this. Yeah, because like even for this video that we just did, like I could have brought in like a real director. I could have brought in like a real, DOP. And instead I just like, I brought in like, one of my close friends,
and I was like, can you just shoot this for me? And he is like a photographer. He is talented at that stuff. But it was like more just about the fact that I felt comfortable enough around him, you know, especially like given the nature of the song, like I had to act, you know, and be vulnerable, which is something I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing around, you know, anyone else. And so like, it just amazes me when people do that on like a set.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's like 100 people watching. Like that is one of the restrictions that sort of comes out of working alone for so long, is that you don't feel comfortable around more than like one person at a time.
Right. And how long were you making music on your own in your bedroom, just like as a prodigy?
As a prodigy. Yeah. I should start every sentence with as a prodigy.
Yeah.
No, I started producing music when I was like 10 or 11. I didn't really I started releasing music when I was 15. Yeah, 15. And so that entire time, so it's been like 10 years now.
Yeah.
That I've just been working alone. It hasn't been the same now, because like this, you know, current album that I've been working on, it's just like, it's full of collaborations, because I was just like, I want to get out of my comfort zone, you know, and work with as many people as I can.
Yeah, you now collaborated with Shamoon.
Yeah.
Shamoon, come on the pod. That's sorry. That's
how much money you make.
Well, I will come on to that later, because your name was also mentioned in that conversation. I didn't know if you heard it, the whole thing. Shamoon, Zoe Vikiji, Misha Shafiab, and there's someone I'm missing. Manu, yeah. And are there more collaborations in the pipeline?
There's two more. Yeah. Well, the album is I don't know if it's happening, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, there's two more. I've done like just production stuff for a lot of people. You know, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Like I've run out of people to work with because I've exhausted all of the people that I could work with. And there's way more people that I've started working with, and then nothing ever really comes of it. You know, it doesn't turn out well. So yeah, I've really embraced collaborations in a big way.
And it's fine. They've been fruitful.
They have been. Well, it's proven to me one thing, which is that I could have a future in just like making jingles and stuff. Because
really,
yeah, because the sort of flexibility you need for something like that, that is something that I've sort of proven to myself that I have.
The flexibility to make a jingle.
Yeah.
Right.
The flexibility to like not be that precious about your own artistic integrity.
But a jingle is not your own, no?
It's not your own. And I feel like, but with these tracks, like I pushed myself to, you know, because I don't think I had that flexibility at all most of my life. With these tracks, I really had to push myself into the other artist's domain.
Right.
You know, which is an uncomfortable feeling, but what I feared would happen didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And what I feared would happen was like, you know, selling out or like, you know, just like, you know, what are you then if you don't have your own thing?
Sure.
You know? But that's not what happened. I just sort of broadened my horizons. I learned how to make other styles of music that I wouldn't have known how to make otherwise, you know? And that's kind of a skill that you need. Like it's not. I'm not saying that I'm gonna like fully be making, you know, Punjabi bangers now, but like it's a useful skill to have to be able to adapt yourself to somebody else's style.
Right. Have you made any commercial jingles? Like have you made any ads?
No. I would though.
Yeah,
I would. Yeah,
you're
so
not against
out there.
yeah. I swear this podcast is literally just going to be us begging, like eventually just begging people for money. Like that's every single episode has been at one point looking straight into camera and just being like, so like if you can throw anything our way.
Venmo me.
But yeah, you wouldn't be against making commercial jingles.
I wouldn't be against it.
Yeah. Why not? Also,
because that's something I've been like hyping myself up for since day one. Because the first thing that people tell me when they hear my music is that my language is not. It's something that's going to hold me back.
I was literally just about to come to that because one of the things that surprised me when you said that you were born and raised in Lahore and you haven't been out is you have a very American accent.
I do. I don't know how that happens.
You're already? It's not. Maybe it's just from consuming so much Western art.
It's mimicry.
Yeah,
It's
that's
mimicry.
crazy. Because I would
Yeah.
literally have thought that you would have spent time abroad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're making English music
Yeah.
or music
And
in English.
yeah, and that's like the one thing that people always have like a problem with. It's just like that is going to limit you. You need to try singing try singing something else, and so you sort of prepare yourself from the start for the possibility that you're never going to be the commercial juggernaut that you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well ready yourself for the possibility that you're going to have to make some things that you don't want to make,
Okay.
to pay the bills. And that's something that I've accustomed myself to that thought.
Mhm.
It doesn't bother me that much anymore.
When people say that to you, that you're limiting your audience by singing in English,
Yeah.
what's your response?
In some ways I've made a dent in that, I feel. Like, as far as I can tell, like, Resistance is sort of one of the few examples of like a track in English like doing well in the mainstream.
Mhm.
I didn't have an example to follow. There was no path before that.
Mhm.
So I kind of had to be the first one to do a track in English and like have it do well in the mainstream, and it happened.
Yeah.
Somehow it happened. And like beyond that, like I'm working with people in the mainstream now. I'm working with people in the mainstream who have never done stuff in English before, or at least like not while they were in the mainstream,
Mm.
So I'm pulling them down to my level. And so it's the last few years have sort of proven to me that it's not entirely hopeless.
Yeah, and that the
Yeah.
audience is actually quite receptive to it.
I mean, people my age, like that's a huge demographic.
Yeah.
There is a pretty big demographic of people who listen to music from the West, and the interesting thing that I found is that a lot of one of my biggest restrictions with that demographic is the people who listen to my music and they're like, oh, like fake accent like that, like
I get that a lot. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it just sort of makes it's like this weird uncanny valley feeling for them where it's like, oh, like this Desi kid is like trying to sound like someone from America and it's like not working for them.
Right.
I don't quite know how I'm going to break that, but
I think you just have to be fine with that kind of criticism. Just like, okay,
yeah, no,
whatever.
I'm fine with that criticism, but it is
Yeah.
like holding off like a large fraction of that demographic from
Right.
like listening to my music. But I feel like if I take over the mainstream and just like force feed them my material, it's gonna
Listen to my song, idiot. Yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever tried making any Urdu music? Has it been something you've explored?
Yeah, the first time I ever did it was like sort of an ambush. When I was, I did a track for Pepsi. I produced a track for Fawad Khan, and Zulfi was producing it as well. And he just like called me into the studio one day, like weeks after the track was done. And he calls me in and he's just like, oh, do backing vocals. And it was just like, I'd literally never sung in Urdu before.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like put on my headphones and I just do the backing vocals, and it was just like no like mental preparation or anything. And that sort of like forced me out of that bubble,
Mm-hmm.
And then going back to that thing of like when I'm in the US, I feel more closely linked to home. So that's exactly what happened when I was over there. Like I was, that's when I was like starting to speak with Misha a lot, and I was listening to her song from Pepsi, Meh, and I just one night, like I don't know what came over me, but it was like 2 a.m. I was like, I want to cover this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just like went over to the recording studio and I recorded a cover which exists, and I did like post a few snippets from it, but that was my first foray into like singing a whole track in Urdu. I wasn't great, but like it was just important to break that barrier for myself. And then the song I did with Manu, the chorus is sort of bilingual, like we keep slipping into and out of English and Urdu.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've done a little bit.
So it's just about breaking that barrier initially.
The problem is writing it Urdu.
Yeah.
Like I am so married to my writing process at this point that that would be too big of a shake up for me to like sit there with a dictionary or like sit there with like Google Translate to like write a whole song. Like what do you call resistance in Urdu? Like nobody can give me an answer to that.
Yeah.
Like so it's really, and particularly like my songwriting, I tend to use a lot of big words. I just wrote a song called Lowest Common Denominator. I don't think you can translate stuff like that into Urdu.
Yeah.
Which I mean, writing in Urdu, like not to say that you can't write something that's just as expressive in Urdu. Like there's
Or complex or whatever. Yeah.
like in Urdu, like I feel like it's more about the cadence of it and more about there's more of a poetic nature to it. There's more beauty to it. I write my songs like an essay, which is like not something that I'm comfortable doing with it because I just don't have enough of a vocabulary
for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the only thing. Like, I mean, I could get somebody else to write it for me and then I could sing it, but that just feels like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's sort of where my line is,
Yeah, I mean, I guess if the songwriting process is going to change so much that you have to kind of adapt to that. I mean, it might be an interesting thing to explore, but that's like maybe down the line.
Yeah.
What is your songwriting process?
As of late, it's become something happens and then I just dump everything that I'm thinking out in prose. Like, it's not even songwriting. I just write it in prose and then I pick out lines that could rhyme if I rephrase them. I replace some more literal things with metaphors, and sort of keep like chiseling away at it until it turns into a song, So it's become a sort of process that I've refined over the years.
And it works for you every time? You can reliably do it?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I feel like I've cracked the code.
Yeah.
But I say that now. Check back in a year.
Yeah.
It might be something completely different.
Yeah. I'm just going to cut it because the cameras are going to stop rolling in a minute. And there's this really annoying sound. I'm sorry if you can hear it, but...
That should be hard to...
Yeah?
Yeah, edit out.
I'm asking the right guy, I feel it. Do I have to do a room tone thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so we just stay silent for like...
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's cut it. Tell me a bit about Resistance in the Nescafe basement experience, because that was pretty crazy, no?
Yeah, that was crazy. I wasn't around for much of it, actually. Because it was happening like right during my exams. So, but it started with like Zulfi just sending me a friend request on Facebook. And then he messaged me and he was like, I have a plan. Come over. I was like, okay. And I went to his house and he had like the whole thing, like exactly like how it turned out. Like he had the whole thing imagined and he showed me like a diagram.
Nice.
And he really just wanted to like sell the electronicness of it, like he wanted to get as many exotic electronic elements and instruments and like he wanted all the laser lights and all that stuff. Like he really wanted to sell that it was electronic, which is like heavy-handed, but like also I get why he wanted to do that because given the market, you want to really, you have to spoon feed them. So he had this whole plan, and then I sort of stepped out of it, and when I came back, it was like for rehearsals and everything was ready, and it was just really like I shudder to think how much money they spent on getting all those instruments ready and stuff. Yeah. But they had,
wasn't there one of those like
a laser harp?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Drum pads, like 3 different synths. Like, there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And they had this like giant drums, that they had like the projection mapping on, and
right.
A lot of stuff. But yeah, the actual shoot, like it was super exhausting because, and I don't even know how the crew did it because they were doing like back-to-back numbers, like they were just up for days. But I was given like a 4 a.m, like they're going to like be there at 4, and so I wake up at 2 and they're like, we don't need you. And I'm like, okay, fine. I just stayed up, and then they're like, we'll call you at 8. And you call me at 8. And then at 12, like nobody was answering their phone. I was like, I'm just gonna show up. Yeah. And I did. And they're like, yeah, we're not ready. So like we don't know what to do with you. And by the time it's 6 p.m, I've already been up for like, how long one is to be up for a day, so I'm getting sleepy. But then I have nowhere to sleep, so I'm just up. And then they don't start like recording just audio until 9 p.m. 9 p.m. they start recording. The audio is done by 12 a.m. Then they don't start recording the video until 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning, start recording video. It's not over till 12 p.m.
Damn, that's a long shift.
Yeah. So I went back home and I fell asleep at 2. So that's like 36 hours that I was just up.
That's nuts.
And like by the end of it, I was just like not even...
Yeah.
I wasn't even like recognizing people's faces. Like it was just...
completely sleep
just
deprived.
blank.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and he made me sing it live for almost every take.
Mm.
And we did like, I would say at least like 20 to 30 takes. Like because they had like 3 cameras, and they were doing it from every angle the entire song.
3 cameras is quite little for this kind of production.
It
huh?
is.
Yeah.
It was 3 DSLRs, and it was like just every angle. Like they were doing the whole track, and the whole
Yeah.
track is what, 6 minutes, right? And he didn't let me lip sync until like the last 5 takes.
Right.
You know,
Uh-huh.
and even those, like, I wasn't in the frame.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know what the point of that was. But he made me sing live every single time because he has, like, you know, he's a perfectionist. He wanted to make sure that I was never singing something that I wasn't actually singing on screen.
Right.
So yeah, but by the end, like, it was just muscle memory.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, I was just singing on autopilot. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
But-
pretty interesting the way they
yeah.
shoot it.
Yeah.
I hope that the.
I don't know. Like, I mean, that same season they did a track which was just kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they did a track that was like 20
Those kids have been up for
Yeah, I
like
know.
48 hours.
I mean, I don't know how that's legal. I'm sure they found like a way around it. But yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah.
They're like crying. Man, that's rough.
Show is good. But yeah, it turned out well. I
Yeah.
was happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, just a little bit well, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really, really cool. How many views is it on right now? Do you know? I haven't checked it recently.
I think it is at 3.7.
And that for you is a little bit of vindication that English music can work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Mhm.
And I think even like the track I did with Shaman was like the first one for me that crossed like 100K just like without any corporate backing, without any like
Mhm.
anybody, you know, pushing it. You know, Resistance was like on the front page of YouTube for like most
Yeah.
Pakistani users for an entire day, you know, and that's when it got the bulk of its views because
Right.
Nescafe has money to burn.
Right. Yeah.
I don't. So
Yeah.
like when like just a track of my own does well, like that's far more rewarding.
Sure.
But there's hope. There
Yeah.
is hope. I've learned
Mhm.
that there's hope.
It's interesting because I was recently talking to Natasha Noorani. I was just doing a quick shoot, like an interview, and she told me about the podcast. She was like, "Don't interview anyone over 25." Right? Because she was like, the kids under 25 still have hope.
Yeah.
Right? So do you still have hope?
Oh man. Well, I'm gonna talk to Natasha about that. She's right. She is right. Yeah. No, I have some hope,
Mhm.
and I think like realistic hope.
Yeah.
You know, like everything that I've achieved so far was just about exactly how much I'd hoped for. You know, I hadn't hoped for more, I hadn't hoped for less. I'd hoped for exactly what I got.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to think that my barometer in that sense is not far off, you know.
Right.
But
Like you don't have an astronomical ambition of
Yeah.
this song is gonna change the world. Or
yeah,
whatever.
I don't have that. I don't like expect to, you know, do like Coke numbers anytime soon. I don't expect to like be a mainstream pop star anytime soon. But I had like hoped that like I could get Nescafe because like they do take like younger, you know,
Sure.
emerging artists. I had hoped that would happen. I had hoped that it would do as well as it did. So like I have like a, you know, a good, I have a nose for like what I can get and what I can't get. You know? So that's about as much hope as I have. You know.
That's a. What do you mean? Like, do you have hope for the future in terms of how your music is gonna be?
I have, yeah, I have a trajectory mapped out in my head.
Yeah.
For like how it's gonna go for me,
Uh-huh.
and none of it is like stuff that I feel like I couldn't realistically get.
Right. Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can call that hope.
Yeah. That's a very like realistic hope.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's very what's
realistic.
pragmatic.
Yeah. It's practical.
Yeah. And but like you said, with the English aspect, that you don't have a blueprint to go off, right? Because nobody really sings that much English music. I mean, people obviously do, but there's not that mainstream appeal for it. So even when it comes to your own music, just generally, you're saying that you have a trajectory mapped out.
Yeah.
You can't really follow anyone else's blueprint with regards to that, right?
Well, my trajectory has less to do with me being a singer and more to do with me being a producer.
Okay.
Because that is where I have found there to be a lot more potential. Like, just in terms of the sound that I work in is sort of, I feel like, going to slowly take over and become the mainstream sound over the next, 5 or 10 years, hopefully. And that's where like my skill as a producer is a commodity that, you know, particularly in corporate music, like might have value.
Right.
Which doesn't mean that that's like I'm putting all my eggs in that basket. Like I'm still going to be doing, you know, what I do for as long as I can. But just in terms of like mapping out a career, that I feel like that's probably the more viable option. I do have hope again for like somehow me as a singer, like my own material, like having, you know, some sort of potential in the mainstream. Like I feel like if, you know, Nescafe could happen, then like, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But that's sort of the stuff that I can't plan out. So
Sure.
I plan out as much as I can.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to ask this, but I kind of have to, since on the Mispa podcast that I did with Mispa, he was talking about how much different musicians might make.
Yeah.
Are you making a living? Or is it in your trajectory to make a living from this kind of from music? Sorry to keep asking questions, but as a artistic thing, not as a commercial producer.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That's a great question. So I will just say this, like
No, give me a figure. How much money do you make?
Exactly, give me a figure. No problem. Give me figures. It's actually in a bunch of my contracts that I can't give out my figures.
Okay, nice.
But that's how they get you.
Yeah.
But I will say for Nescafe, like I was massively underpaid. For Pepsi, I was massively underpaid. I didn't I did like my first, well, not my first, but like another corporate like music program, which isn't out yet this year. They paid me well, you know. But these sorts of things, like they come around like once a year. I would say like, your main revenue stream has to be from like streaming and shows and stuff. Yeah. And that's pretty minuscule. Yeah. So no. Yeah. There's pretty much no money. Right. With like, you know, the thing about like Spotify chalta nahi hai, you know. Patari hasn't paid anybody in like years. YouTube, like the Pakistani CPM is what, like $0.06 per
bad,
play.
dude. It's so bad.
So, not to you know, beat the hope out of you, but like that's kind of what it is.
Natasha, you were wrong. This is an awful idea. The kids are way worse.
The kids are looking at their stats. 24 hours a day. Yeah, my analytics are telling me that I've made no money today. No, but like, I mean, that's why I say I should be a producer. Right. Because look at the Zulfis and the Rohels and the, you know, Nuris. Like, they're making, you know, huge amounts of money for every season of like Coke and Pepsi or whatever they do. You know? And I feel like that I feel like that is my comfort zone. Yeah, you know? They stay behind the scenes. Sure, yeah. You know, they get to curate talent, you know, and they get to like create sounds even if they're not, you know, at the forefront of it. You know, and that's sort of what I would like to be doing. Yeah. You know? Nice. So that's the end goal. That's light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. Before we had this discussion, we were messaging and you said that I asked you when the album is coming out, so we might be able to coincide the release of this with that, if you know. And you said, I don't know if the album is ever going to come out. Yeah. Is this just musicians being dramatic, or is this... well, a little bit, yeah. I am a drama queen. The only reason I say this is because I've heard it so many times. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe I won't even release the album. No. This isn't like me just in a crack den. At 4 a.m, just like frustrated with my art. Right. You know, no, this is like... well, basically, like, you know, the corporate show that I did, that I mentioned, I basically used my entire paycheck to like finally get myself a computer. Okay. Because I've been working on like a 2012 MacBook for the last, you know, 5 years, and it's just Apple. Like, yep. Yeah. Sponsor us. Yeah, we can't say laptop. We have to say it's a MacBook. It's a MacBook. It's an iPhone. It's a MacBook. Yeah. But yeah, and it was just like breaking down. Like it was really hard to work. So I finally like got the money. And I got myself like a new computer, and I, you know, it was going well. But that was in June, and then like 3 days ago, my room gets flooded. No. Yeah. Kahan pe? Lahore mein? Yeah. Shit. I was just a roof, and there's like a hole in my roof. Oh, and, no. Yeah. And You are in a crack den. I wish.
Yeah.
I wish I was Jack Kerouac. I wish I was. Anyway,
And the laptop went?
yeah. It's at the repair shop now. But like
Mhm.
they opened it in front of me, like it was pretty gone.
Right,
You know, like
right.
it was submerged in the water for like 3 hours.
Oh, damn.
So, you know, it doesn't recover from that. The hope is like if I can get the data back, because, you know, a lot of times the hard drive is sort of encased in a waterproof thing. So like if they can get my data back, then I can, you know, get the album out.
Right. Oh, crap. Okay.
But if they can't, then
You didn't send any of the, you didn't back any of this stuff up?
I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I'm dumb. But I have like, you know, WhatsApp transfers and
Right.
like old mixes and
Uh-huh.
stuff. But like you can't really do much without the actual like project files.
Mm.
And that was all on the computer. The interesting thing that happened, like I mean, by the time this is out, like you'll know, because I'm supposed to find out tomorrow if it, you know,
Okay.
if I have the data or not.
Okay.
So by the time this is out, I will have either revealed the album cover and track list or a long essay on my Instagram about why it's not coming out. But what had happened, and I'm sort of like spoiling the surprise now, is I'd actually made my third album, and it was done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to just sort of like surprise drop it 2 days after this one came out,
Okay.
just for the, just because like why not?
Uh-huh.
And that one was done, and I, like the night this happened, I sort of took out the first export of that album,
Okay.
and I put it on my phone. So should if I don't get the data back,
Right.
then I have this album sort of milk for the next
Crazy.
year. You know,
And you had finished that. You it was in a more finished state than the album that was meant to come out.
the one, yeah. So the one that was supposed to come out this month. That was pretty much done, but then I got like a new collab on it, and then like a couple other tracks. Like I did some, you know, mix stuff, and like I was still tinkering with the masters. The one that was supposed to come out as a surprise, like right after that, it was not in a more finished state, but also like it was a less ambitious project.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Okay.
And it was also like, it was one of those things where like now that I have to accept what I have as the final version of it, I'm not mad at it. Like
yeah.
it's like, it's just sort of putting a stop to my perfectionism and just
Right.
like,
It is what it is.
it is what it is.
Mm.
You know, and I'm pretty happy with it.
And it's on your phone. Please back it up right
It's
now.
on my phone. It's an MP3.
You're gonna
on my
drop it
phone.
in a puddle. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
No, but it's on my music app on my phone, which I don't know how you get music out of your music app and onto a computer.
You're asking me right now how
Yeah.
I can get this album out.
I'm sure there's some like weird backdoor method to doing that, but yeah, that's an interesting album, the one after this one.
What's the vibe on that?
So this one, it's called Heterotopia. This one is like really the most ambitious thing I've ever done. Like you have like, you know, I have like 6 features on it. Like it's 14 tracks. I sort of like I feel like it's akin to like going back to Gaga for a second, like what Gaga did with like her art pop album, which is like sort of dabbling in every kind of pop music that I know how to make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Is Gaga a big influence for you?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to her a lot. So, but it doesn't sound like her, but like in terms of the concept, like,
Right.
it's similar in that like it's really like every style that I know how to make. Like the end of the album is like really abstract, and like Magenta Cyan is towards the end of the album. Like it's really abstract. It's more experimental, like much longer tracks. You know, they're drone and there's like ambient stuff happening.
Nice.
But then there's like trap
Yeah.
towards the top of it as well. You know, there's a song Preacher which I put out, which is just like, you know, made out of samples of my voice in my hands, like the whole track. You know, so it's like really like getting as many people as I could on board, getting as many names as I could, and you know, working in as many subgenres as I could. The one after that is much shorter. It's 9 tracks. It's 30 minutes. And it's much more. I set out to make a folk album, actually.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
But then Taylor Swift came and ruined everything.
Yeah.
And then I thought everybody's gonna think I was like cheating.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, yeah, let's back off the folk concept a bit. It's still sort of based in folk, like it's very guitar heavy. Like
Nice.
I've always been very averse to guitar. Like there's no guitar in any of my music. But this one, like there's a guitar in pretty much every track. There's like weird experimental piano stuff happening. It's like the main takeaway from this album is the songwriting. Like, it's a lot more explicitly autobiographical. It's a lot more personal. It's a lot more descriptive. And it's a much softer album. It's a quarantine album. It's a very domestic album. You know, so it is a departure for me. But it's also like,
where did you learn all this shit? Where did you learn how to do this?
Where did I trial and error. That's pretty much it.
Really?
Yeah.
YouTube?
At the start, yeah. Like, I learned how to play guitar from YouTube.
Yeah. What about production? Where did you learn that?
Trial and error.
What does that mean?
It's all just like hit buttons until you hit pay dirt. Like, that's what it is. It's just like keep trying, like keep turning knobs until it sounds good.
Right.
You know? And then over the years, like, I started to learn the concepts behind it, you know,
Sure.
what different things meant, you know. And then YouTube came back into the mix once I like was working on like a more professional setup, then I needed help. But yeah, for the most part, it's just seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Jamal was on here. Jamal can testify like what my projects look like if you open them up.
Oh, really?
It's
a mess?
just chaos. It's just random shit. Just like what it's like sounds, you know, that I can't even trace back when I hear my songs, like what sound that is. Like, it used to be a bird at some point. Now it sounds like a violin. I don't know how that happened, but it just happened.
Right.
You know, so it really is like a very free form kind of process for me.
So what's gonna happen now? What's your current thought right now? If it doesn't come back tomorrow, you're gonna release the third album?
If it doesn't come back tomorrow, I am going to like rummage through all the, you know, backups that I have and see what's salvageable. You know, I feel like the, you know, disparities in quality between the different salvaged versions to come is going to be, it's going to be too much to like call it an album. So I'm probably going to end up just like seeing what I can salvage and then just like putting them out as singles.
Do you know J. Paul?
Yeah.
It's a very similar story, no?
Yeah, I know.
I was so excited for his album because he'd released like only 3 tracks before that. Jasmine and Straight Out of Mumbai, which I thought were the most like, even now I listen to them, I'm like, that's the most insane stuff I've ever.
Jasmine is genius, man.
Straight Out of Mumbai is also genius with that sample at the end.
Yeah.
Sorry for people, you should go and listen to these 2 songs because they're unbelievable. And then his album gets hacked and leaked. All these like super, what do you call them, like
demos,
super demo tracks, but you can still hear the ideas in them, and they're just like, oh my god, this guy's on a crazy level. And then he didn't release it.
Yeah, but I feel like my demos aren't in like that bad a state. You know, they're listenable. But I have this habit of like saving my sort of final touches until like the day before release.
No way.
Yeah. And it's a bad habit, but like so that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know, all the tracks that I haven't put out yet, they still had like little things that I needed to do. But you know, I feel like there's just one track that I'm really sort of remorseful about, which is like the one collab that I had left, which was like a really like it was a track that I was super excited for. And I just have like one MP3 of it, and it's like WhatsApp quality MP3.
No way.
Yeah.
That's kind of, that has its own lo-fi feel to it though, no, sometimes?
It's, I mean, when you pass like it's a very commercial track. Like it's a very glossy, it's a pop song.
Right.
And when you pass that through like the lo-fi-ness of like, you know,
WhatsApp,
like 256 kbps MP3, it's not going to sound great.
Yeah.
But then also like, you know, going back to what Jamal said to me, he was like, people don't know the difference. Like,
I swear, yeah. I definitely don't.
Yeah. I mean, that's why Tidal didn't do so well, because who's listening to lossless audio? Like, nobody can tell the difference. So.
One last question I had, which was, I'm just interested in your relationship to the audience, because there's a couple of times during this conversation where you said, I think when it was in relation to Resistance coming out, you said something about I can't remember now, but, you know, what's your relationship with the audience in terms of the fact that you're making this kind of experimental art pop type vibe and in English? Do you have a kind of you said you have to force feed them stuff, or you have to spoon feed them stuff. So do you think of the audience as something that is sort of regressive and that you need to be pulled into the future, or what?
Well, there's 2 audiences. There's my audience, and then there's the audience that I don't have. I feel like my audience is all the people who already had, an affinity towards the kind of music that I make, and they flocked towards it, and they're the people who I didn't even really have to market. I didn't have to market to them, they just sort of came on board. The people who are not listening to music every day, people who are not listening to Western music every day, those are the audiences who, like when you listen to like something that I've made that's like particularly experimental, right? You're not going to enjoy it unless you understand a lot of the context of what came before it,
Sure.
You're not going to understand how I'm subverting the tropes of pop music unless you understand the tropes of pop music.
Right.
So there's a lot of context that these audiences don't have. And so you have to really be blunt about things. You have to really, like, if you're selling them on electronic music, you have to show them a laser harp. There's no other way on selling them.
Do you get it yet?
Yeah.
Idiots?
Yeah. Lasers.
Yeah. Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah. Electricity. That's what we're, so you really have, you do have to, like, and that's not to say that they're any worse than, like, no audience is worse than any other audience in any way. It's just about, like, what they've been exposed to. Like, our industry doesn't exist.
Yeah. So you are okay with talking down in the sense that you have to modify your sound somewhat in order to make it palatable for them, or no?
I haven't compromised all that much, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but that's where that same split of, like, producer versus singer comes in.
Right.
Like, I feel like in the material that has my name on it, like, it's not, I'm not pandering much.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, there have been tracks where, like, I've been adapting to, like, other artists' style.
Mm-hmm.
But there's never been, like, tracks where I'm like, oh, I have to make something that's going to be a hit.
Right. Okay. I was just about to ask you, do you make some, like, weird ass, like, abstract tracks and then you're like, let's make a banger now as well? So it's...
I do that, but then usually, like, even the tracks that I try to make into bangers, like, there's always something that's gonna keep it from, like, being
just a generic hit. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Like, even if you look at something like Resistance, right? Like, the music is super accessible. It's very much, like, dark EDM, right? And that's a sound that we know to sell, right? The lyrics are nonsense. The lyrics are just full of $10 words and
right.
Weird metaphors that I don't even fully get. So it's like, so then there's that thing that gets in the way.
I think that I was writing a review of one of your songs, or I can't remember what it was, and even I was looking at the lyrics, I was like, what the fuck?
So it's like the lyrics are always like stream of consciousness, weird abstract stuff, and then, like, the music.
I'm having to open a dictionary. You know what I mean?
so like it's like I feel like I could really pander by making accessible music with very accessible lyrics, but why do that when I have the option of just, like, producing music, and that's sort of the avenue where I don't, I'm okay with, like, dumbing things down, and I have, and you're gonna, and that corporate show that I was talking about, I've possibly done the worst thing I've ever done on that show, and you're gonna hear it.
Acha?
Yeah, it's a cover.
Okay.
I'll tell you when we're.
Okay.
I can't say it now, but I'll tell you.
Off the record.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we're almost at. What's next for you? So it's either one of the albums, hopefully, inshallah.
You'll know when it's out.
Yeah.
You'll know by the time this is out.
Yeah.
And
then after that, you're back to America?
Hopefully. Yeah. By January. And then, I'm just gonna. Well, first of all, I need to get a new laptop. That's the first thing.
And please back up your data.
Venmo me.
Yeah. Back to the real reason this podcast exists.
Give me
please.
Money. Give me money.
Yeah.
Let's hope another corporate show comes by and, like, gives me the money I need to get a new laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna just keep
making music,
churning out new material.
That's awesome. Well, there we go. The prodigy Abdullah Siddiqui. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Cut it.